Ever since the very first Zelda game, items have been a staple of the series. They're one of the fundamental aspects of what makes a Zelda game, up there with dungeons, exploration, combat, and story. Most of the ones you find in these games are required, but a couple of them are also just there to be rewards for exploring the world or doing side quests. Your instincts would probably tell you that you can obtain every one of these items at any point, because that's usually what non-level based games do, but what if I told you that in quite a few Zelda games, there are plenty of items that can become permanently unobtainable and lost in the ether? We're gonna get into it, but of course, consider doing the things the algorithm likes if you enjoy the video. I'm still making that Zelda games tier list at 100 subs, and we're not too far off now. Thank you. Before we begin, let's determine what I would consider an item. Obviously, anything that ends up in your inventory or equipment screen counts, but I'm also gonna add collectibles to that list, meaning things like heart pieces and skulltulas or mai-mais. In addition to that, any object that doesn't really do anything but that can be seen in some game menus such as letters will count as well. I'm however not gonna count items that can be obtained but lost under certain circumstances, as you have technically acquired it at some point. I'm also not gonna include stuff like rupees or anything else that can be replaced or farmed if need be, including any missable treasure chests that would hold them. I also chose to exclude bottled content, as I also see these as consumables, even if a specific type of content would become unobtainable at some point. I just find it hard to consider these items. Finally, as per tradition on this channel, I'm only going to be talking about the mainline games in this video, so no Tingles, Rosy Rupee Land, no Hyrule Warriors, no CDI games, etc. Alright, that's long enough for an intro. These are The Legend of Zelda's many missable items. We won't need to look too far to start off this list, as the very first game in the series has things that can be permanently missed. If you've played the game, you might remember that there are choices you can make with some of the NPCs. A couple of the heart containers you can find are offered to you as a choice between it and a potion. If you take the potion, the container is gone and can never be obtained, meaning you cannot reach the maximum amount of health anymore. Picking the potion here is clearly a wrong choice, especially since the sword upgrades in Zelda 1 are locked behind health capacity, so don't ever make that choice guys, just pick the heart container. Yeah, not much else to say about this one, it's pretty straightforward. I would say that I don't understand how this got into the final game, but hey, it was the very first game in the series, so it's a bit more forgivable. For our next game, we need to skip a couple of entries to Link's Awakening, and there's a surprising amount of missable stuff in that one. What I'm going to talk about only applies to the DX version and the original black and white when applicable. The first thing that can be missed are seashells, specifically 3 of them. The first 2 are obtained by visiting the Seashell Mansion, which gives you a price based on how many you've collected. There are 3 prices you can get there. 2 of them being additional seashells, and the last one being the level 2 sword. They are given to you when you've collected 5, 10, and 20. So far so good, but here's the catch. The sword can be obtained at any time once you have at least 20 out of the 26 shells, but the other 2 have to be collected when you have exactly 5 and 10 seashells respectively. No more, no less. If you happen to find a 6th or 11th one on your way there, too bad, it's gone forever. I thought at first that this was an obvious oversight, but seeing how you cannot miss the sword, it kinda feels intentional. Especially since after collecting the sword, the remaining seashells will disappear from the island completely, which I guess you could also say makes them missable in a way. I'll leave that up to you to decide. The last one you can miss is the one near Camelot Castle, located in a chest in the underground passage at the end of a small path blocked by 5 potholes, which is too many to jump over with the boots and the feather. The only way to get to it is by using the rooster, which is only available during a very short time frame in the playthrough. The rooster is located under the weather vane in Mabe Village and needs to be revived from the dead using the Frog's Song of Soul. Once revived, the Flying Pal will then accompany you and let you fly when you pick him up. He's necessary to obtain the Bird Key, which unlocks the 7th dungeon, and will stop following you once you finish it. However, the weather vane can only be pushed open once you have the level 2 bracelets, which is the item of the 6th dungeon, meaning that you'll only realistically be able to grab that seashell between those 2 dungeons. In the remake, in addition to fixing the seashell mansion, they added a hook-shottable pole at the end of the path, so it's no longer missable. Unfortunately, it also removed the Deadly Rooster combo. We really can't have nice things, can we? Speaking of nice things, the next set of items you can miss are similar to what letters would be. They're some of the pictures taken by the mouse photographer in the DX version. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, it's probably because you've played the remake on the Switch, where the photographer has been replaced with Dompe's awful dungeon maker, and might be the biggest tragedy in Zelda history. But yeah, the photographer will take pictures of you at different points in the game once you come across certain places or do certain things. Out of the 12 pictures you can get, 4 of them are missable. 3 of those can only be taken while Marin is following you, which is only for a very short segment between the 3rd and 4th dungeons, similar to the previously mentioned rooster. One of them is at the other end of the beach where you meet up with her, one of them is while falling down the well, and the last one is near the also previously mentioned weather vane, and I gotta say, I love the look Link and especially Marin give in that one. Terran is clearly intruding and they're not happy. The 4th and final one is the one in front of Canalit Castle, which can be taken at any point until you lower the castle's bridge. If you do that, then you can't get it anymore. As a final note, the very first picture is something that can be chosen between these 2 depending on how you enter the photographer. Since one of them technically cannot be obtained during a playthrough, I thought I should mention it. By the way, can we take a second to appreciate how amazing these pictures are? Back in the day, you could even print them out via the Game Boy printer. Yes, that was a real thing. Too bad Nintendo and Grezzo didn't think they were worth preserving and thought that a tech demo for a game that will never come out was a better replacement. What a shame. Okay, as it turns out, I lied to you guys. There's an extra seashell and photograph that are missable, and it's all because of this guy, the Ghost. He's supposed to start following you after you finish the Angler's Tunnel, but he is programmed to not show up at all if you have the level 2 bracelets, which is something that's actually possible to obtain before finishing the Angler's Tunnel. If you get the flippers from the dungeon but leave without finishing it to then go get the hookshot in Catfish Smaw, you should have everything you need to get the level 2 bracelets in the Face Shrine. I'm assuming the reason for this flag is so that you don't have him and the rooster following you at the same time because of a lack of active memory space. The game is fairly old after all, so it wouldn't surprise me. So, because the ghost never appears if you do that, it makes the seashell in his abandoned house, as well as the picture you take in front of his grave, unobtainable, as you need to complete his quest to be able to get both. Considering the ghost is just pure padding in this game, all I have to say is rest in peace, you won't be missed. Next up we have Ocarina of Time, and this one is quite something. There are 4 items you can miss in a playthrough, which is probably more than you thought, and only 3 of them have been fixed in the remake. The first one I already brought up before on my channel. It's the nut upgrade you can obtain in the Deku Theater by wearing the Mask of Truth. Basically, this upgrade becomes unavailable after collecting the Poacher's Saw, which seems to be a bug with a flag from collecting an item in the Lost Woods, something along those lines. The second one is a piece of heart, specifically the one you get from the Dompe digging minigame. If you get Dompe to dig it out, but don't collect it for some reason, leave the area and come back, it'll be unavailable anymore, lost forever. Maybe Dompe was like Finders Keepers bitch and hid it away somewhere. Maybe he brought it with him to heaven when leaving us, who knows. The next item you can miss is a dungeon map, specifically the one in Jabu Jabu's belly. This one can be missed if you choose to not open the big chest that appears in the room after getting rid of the tendril, and instead go on ahead and complete the dungeon. The reason why this becomes unavailable is because the room is blocked by a blue switch, which requires to leave something on it for the door to stay open. The issue is, when you finish the dungeon, Ruto isn't in here anymore, meaning you can't place her on the switch like you normally would, preventing you from entering the room. If you were wondering why some wooden crates have been seemingly randomly added to this specific room in the remake, this is the reason why. Anyway, there's one last item that can be missed. Can you think of what it might be? Can you figure out what item is permanently missable from your inventory? And yes, it's an actual item. Not a golden sculptula, not a heart piece, a real item. No, it's not the giant's knife. That one's just a downgraded version of an item you can always get, so it doesn't count. How about we do a little prediction? I'll let you write in the comments what item you think it is. Just type, I think you can miss blank in Ocarina of Time. I'll leave you time to write it down. All done? Okay then. It is... the Goron tunic. No, I'm not kidding. You can actually fail to obtain the item entirely. How does that happen? Well, get ready, cause it's complicated. The first thing you need to do is getting the long shot from the water temple. If you've watched my Dungeons Out of Order video, you already know that you can do water before fire, so it's not something that should be too difficult to do. With this, instead of going through Goron City to reach Death Mountain Crater, you can get there by climbing Death Mountain from the outside and enter from the top. Once in there, you can then jump down on a small platform holding rupees and then use the long shot on either Pierre, the Scarecrow, which you can make appear from the rupee platform, or the wooden plank. That also works. I don't know what Pierre is doing down there, but let's hope his straws are made of steel or something. I'm not sure where I'm going with this one. Anyway, note that a timer will start counting down in the area because you don't have the Goron tunic yet, but the amount of time you have depends on how many hearts you have. If you're low on life before entering the place, you can always heal back up to full at the fairy fountain where you obtain the first magic power. Then, what you'll need to do is finish the fire temple without the Goron tunic, which might seem impossible at first, but most of the rooms in the dungeon surprisingly won't try to cook you alive. A timer will only appear in the room where you meet Darunia, the first big lava room, the block elevator room, the wall of fire room, and the boss room. That's it. So for most of the dungeon, you can walk around with no tunic and be completely fine. If you really want to be safe, there are two fairies on the right side of the room where you meet Darunia that you can bottle up, which you can get infinitely by leaving and re-entering the room. If you die due to the heat, a fairy will revive you at full health and the timer will start over, so you should be fine if you've collected enough heart pieces and a couple of bottles. I promise it's easier than it looks. Once the dungeon is finished, if you head back inside Goron City, the smaller Goron will still be there, but he won't have the same dialogue, meaning you won't be able to get the tunic. But wait, you might say, can't you just buy the tunic at the shop for 200 rupees? Great question, my friend, and the answer is no, because the little Goron is the one that opens up the door to the shop after giving you the tunic. Because of this, the shop is now permanently closed as an adult, and the shop owner will unfortunately have to die of hunger. Rest in peace to the one that wasn't captured that Link still couldn't save. And no, you can never buy the tunic as a child, the shop owner just never sells it to you. This oversight is still possible to perform in the 3D version, so if it's the only one you have access to, have fun locking yourself out of 100% completion, I guess. But yeah, that's quite crazy how many things can be missed in this game. I swear Ocarina of Time just keeps getting more and more fascinating to me every day. Up next, we have the Oracle games, and we got two things to talk about here. The first one is semi-obvious if you've played these games, which is the different flutes you can get. If you don't know, during these games, you get one of the 3 animal buddies to help you traverse the world. Those are Ricky the kangaroo, Moosh the bear, and Dimitri the dinosaur. That decision, if you can call it that, is made pretty early on in the playthrough, and each one of these animals comes with its own unique flute. You end up needing the help of all 3 of them at some point in each game, but only one can be called with their respective flute, and you can only obtain one of these flutes per playthrough. But yeah, not much else to say here, it's basically the same situation as the LADX photograph. The other item can only be missed in the Japanese version of the games, as it was fixed in the NA and EU versions. I'm talking about the level 3 ring box. For those who don't know, rings are the main collectible of the Oracle games. Once you find one, it will need to be appraised at Vasu's shop and will be stored there just like money at the bank in Majora's Mask. The ring box is what allows you to carry some of them around and eventually equip them for various effects, some better than others, but only one can be equipped at a time. The level 1 box only allows you to carry 1 ring at a time, but the level 2 allows you to carry 3, and the level 3 allows you to carry 5. To get the level 3 ring box in either game, you need to do what's called a linked playthrough, where you start a file in one game and carry it over to the other one. Many items can be obtained by doing this, like the Mirror Shield, the Master Sword, and many more. How the whole thing works is a bit complicated, but I'll do my best to explain. No matter which game you start with, you'll be able to find a level 2 box in it, given to you by Goron in Seasons and sold to you at the secret shop in Ages. When continuing the playthrough in the second game, one NPC will give you a secret in the form of a password that you can then tell to someone in the first game you completed to get the level 3 ring box, or the level 2 box if you only had the level 1 at that point. If that happens, the level 3 will be at the spot the level 2 was instead. That NPC will then reciprocate and give you a new password that you can then tell the Furore in the second game, which will give you the same upgrade. Did you get all that? Awesome. In the Japanese version, however, that Furore upgrade can be permanently unobtainable due to a bug. The problem is that Furore cannot give you the level 3 box at all, meaning that if you already picked up the level 2 box from either the Goron or the shop in the second game, you won't be able to upgrade it. I have no idea why that is, I'm not a programmer, and there's also very little information available on this as you can probably imagine, so I can't give much more detail on it than that. At the very least, if you get the level 2 box from Furore first, you can still get the level 3 from the Goron or the shop afterwards. If you grew up in Japan and are watching this and this happened to you, I'm sorry for your loss. Up next, we have the Wind Waker, and I think you all know what I'm about to say with that one. Figurines! If you're not aware, the Wind Waker has this thing called the Nintendo Gallery, a place to make figurines from pictures taken of all the people and creatures in the game. Several of them are missable during your playthrough, either because they're only seen during a specific moment, or because they're an enemy that can be encountered and defeated only once. When it comes to enemies and bosses, these are the Big Octos, as there are only 6 of them and don't respawn when defeated, Phantom Ganon, same concept but there are only 2, the Orange Wizrobe in the Wind Temple, yes, that one's unique, the Helmrock King, and Puppet Ganon. When it comes to the NPCs, there's Cyclos, which needs to be photographed from underneath while fighting him, and this one's pretty annoying since there's no way to truly verify if the picture you've taken will work unless you defeat him, meaning he'll be gone, or by letting yourself get caught and having no fast travel options. There's Tetra, whose only chance to be photographed is during the short time she goes with you to Hyrule. There's Gogoli, one of the Ritos on Dragon Roost Island, who just disappears for no reason at all once you beat the Earth Temple. And finally, there's Knuckle, who I've talked about before in my video on the Tingle Tuner. This last one is only a problem in the GameCube version of the game, as if you get every other figurine in that version, Karlov will leave the gallery and Knuckles will be unobtainable. Fortunately, once you finish the game, a second quest becomes available in which you start with the Picto Box if you had it in your previous file, and every figurine you've collected will also be carried over, meaning you still get another chance at finishing the gallery if you couldn't do it the first time. I don't know why you'd do that to yourself, but you can if you so desire. Outside of Tetra, who can be photographed on Outset Island at the beginning, there are no new opportunities to get any of the ones I mentioned in that second quest, meaning you still have to be careful to not miss them again. Speaking of figurines, our next game is the Minish Cap, and there's a lot to talk about with this one. This game has probably the most famous missable item in the series, being the light arrows. For those unaware, the Minish Cap has this mechanic called Kinstone Fusions, which, to keep it very simple, are a bunch of event triggers with the various NPCs to open secret areas or complete side quests. They make up most of the side content in the game, and some of the main quests too. I don't want to dwell too much on how the whole thing works, as it's not that important, but what is important is that some of them are missable. Fortunately for you and for me, so that this video isn't longer than it needs to be, most of them grant things like rupees and other forms of consumables that can be farmed elsewhere. There are, however, a couple of them who lead to important stuff, and one of those is the light arrows. In this game, that item is purely optional, and is done by fusing a kinstone with this guy in Hyrule Town, which will open a portal to reach the Wind Tribe above the clouds much earlier than when you're supposed to. When you do, you'll see their leader haunted by a ghost, and getting rid of it will make sure he's alive later in the game. If he is, he will remember you and give you the light arrows as a thank you. Honestly, it's not that big of a deal if you miss those, as the bow sucks ass in the Minish Cap, it's completely impractical and does almost no damage, and the light arrows are barely an upgrade, so if you miss them, don't feel too bad. However, if you really want them, as long as you don't ride the cyclone to the cloud tops and reach the Wind Tribe, they'll remain available. There's one more kinstone fusion that needs to be talked about, which, if missed, prevents you from getting not one, but 2 items. It's the one done with Ini, the farmer. This one is only missable in the PAL version, which is the one found in Europe and Australia. If you're watching this, happen to have a physical copy of the game and are from these areas, chances are it's the version you have. Anyway, there's a bug with that specific fusion in that version. If you try to fuse with him but cancel it out and leave the area, you will not be able to fuse with him ever again. This fusion is part of the fairly long Goron side quest, where you gather 6 Gorons to dig through a tunnel, and missing this fusion prevents one of them from showing up. The reward for doing this whole thing is not only one of the bottles, but it also lets you access the fusion that wakes up Bigoron, and thus making you unable to acquire the Mirror Shield. If you think for a second about how kinstones work, you'll understand very quickly that this is mind-blowingly terrible. What do you do if you don't have the kinstone Ini wants on you at the time? There's no way to know in advance what kinstone he wants unless you look up a guide, so if you don't have it on you at the time, you're fucked. It's over. Delete your file and try again. Even though it baffles me that this happened considering the PAL version is usually the one released last, these items aren't that big of a deal to miss. There are 3 other bottles in the game, and the Mirror Shield is only available after defeating the final boss, so it could be worse, but it still sucks though. A piece of heart is also missable in Castle Town, being the one behind Simon's simulations. If you complete the first game but die or save and quit before opening the chest that has the heart piece, then it'll become lost forever. Turns out, the flag to know to change the reward for these minigames is tied to beating the challenge and not collecting the reward itself. So if you get out of the cleared room before picking up the reward, you won't be able to get it at all. So yeah, moral of the story, open your treasure chests before dying. Amen. Finally, let's talk about the figurines, as there's another bug related to those. Look, I don't want to bore you, so I'll be brief on how they work. You bring mysterious seashells to Karlov, and you can get figurines via a lottery system. Each one can only be obtained if you've encountered the NPC or enemy they're based on. That's all you need to know really. Here's the problem though. Even if you've collected every figurine that you could at any point in the game, there's still a chance that, when you try pulling the lever, you get a new one that you aren't supposed to see yet. If that happens, it will be added to the list, but the game will not count it as a new one, meaning that the game will not think the gallery is complete even if you obtain all 136 figurines. This results in you never being able to obtain Karlov's medal, but it fortunately won't prevent you from obtaining the heart piece, as Herb will still let you in the house as long as you have all of the original 130 figurines. Thank the Lord for that. It'd be horrible otherwise. You just lose the medal in your inventory if that happens, which is still technically visible in the menu, so it counts as an item. The best thing to do to avoid this is to wait until the post-game to get all the figurines, or just don't bother, it's clearly not worth it. Seriously, just don't do it. Getting all the Koroks in Tears of the Kingdom is more fun. I would assume. I didn't actually do that either. Up next is Twilight Princess. This one will be a nice change of pace as it's very simple. There are 2 letters you can miss. That's it. Both of them come from Uku, who you can find in every dungeon, helping you warp out of them if you need to leave for any reason, and then come back to the same room you were before leaving. The first one is obtained by finishing the Forest Temple without warping out, which should be easy enough to get, but hopefully you don't run out of lantern oil while in there. The second one is sent to you if you have warped out of any dungeon before completing it, and this one is arguably the easier one to miss. Basically, all you have to do to not miss any of these letters is not warp out of the forest temple, but warp out and back in any other dungeon before City in the Sky. There you go, problem solved. You still have to find Uku in the forest temple to get the first letter. I know it sounds obvious when said like that, but I'm just making sure you know everything, okay? 3 Zelda releases in a row now. Phantom Hourglass is next. On the subject of letters, one of them works the same way the first LEDX picture does. On your way to get the salvage arm, a letter will be sent to you but will change depending on if you collect it before or after getting said salvage arm. The former is just an ad telling you that the arm is ready, while the latter is a thank you message for purchasing it and also comes with a bonus ship part, so there's really no reason not to get that one instead. There's only one last thing you can miss in the game, being the heart container from the Cubist sister, the boss of the ghost ship, but this one you really have to try your best not to get it. See, the ghost ship is the 4th dungeon, and is the only one you cannot go back inside once you beat it. I think you can figure out what happens if you don't pick up the boss's heart container. But, as an act of mercy I would presume, the developers thought about this. They made sure that if you somehow miss the heart container, it will be mailed to you. That said, upon receiving the letter, you still have an option to decline the heart container, and if you do, now it's really gone forever. Like I said, you really have to give it your all to miss this one, but the mailing thing is also really funny, so I'm happy with the end result. It still gives you the option to go for a 3 heart run, so I think it's the best case scenario. For our final game, we're jumping 10 years ahead to Breath of the Wild, and this one is so stupid. I can't believe Nintendo didn't think about this specific case. Did you know that Breath of the Wild has a limit on how many armor pieces you can carry? Yeah, me neither. At least not before making this video. Turns out, it's 100. Normally, this wouldn't be a problem, as the vast majority of this type of equipment is found in shops, from which you won't be able to buy anything if you're full, or in chests, and those will just close back up, letting you pick them up again later. But what happens to the armor pieces that aren't found in shops or chests? You lose them! Forever! That's what happens. I'm not kidding. If you go talk to Impa for the first time with a full inventory, she will not give you the champion's tunic like she's supposed to, and if that happens, you are never able to get it again. Same thing with the Thunder Helm. You want it? Oops, it's gone. Fortunately, it's not the case for the Zora armor. You will be able to get it if you ever get to Zora's domain with a full inventory. They at least understood that a required armor for the main quest had to be obtained no matter what, thank God. I wish that line of thought had been carried over for, I don't know, the official tunic of the game, but I guess that was too much to ask. And that's it, we're done! Finally, this list ended up being way longer than I initially expected. I was aware of a couple of these before I started to make this video, but I never expected to talk about nearly half the series. It's kind of insane to me that missable items have been a common occurrence in the series in every single one of its eras when they debatably shouldn't even exist. The only case where I could see them being acceptable is something like in Link's Awakening, where the shells all disappear after getting the final prize. Anyway, I hope you learned something today. Don't make the mistake of losing any of these items now if you happen to replay these games. With that said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Leave your thoughts in the comments, take care, and see you next time, guys.